Hello, my name is Joseph Deane. I am a collection moves digitiser as part of NHM Unlocked at the Natural History Museum in London. My talk is Imaging Amber, creating a novel workflow to digitise the Natural History Museum's Amber collection. So the Natural History Museum is currently conducting a historic move, hoping to move 28 million specimens to a new site in Thames Valley Science Park, with a further 10 million moving internally. Ahead of this, the digitisation team is working on various novel workflows to try and capture the information needed for those collections to move. One way that we are doing this is focusing on specific significant collections, and the first of these was the Arthropod Amber collection. This collection is significant because it has both high commercial value and high scientific importance. The collection was split into roughly 1/3 slide specimens and 2/3 hand specimens. Luckily for us, we had two existing workflows that mapped quite nicely onto these two specimen types. So in theory, problem solved. The issue was that the collection was not split by specimen type. So within the same drawer, you would often find both slides and hand specimens together. So we needed to create a new workflow that would allow us more flexibility when imaging these specimens. These are some of the differences between the workflows. So different barcodes used, different layout and imaging, and these all had to be considered. So luckily for us, both the entomology slide and pinned insects workflow used the same hardware setup, so we could just reuse that again. One of the biggest differences, though, was that the paleontology records already existed within the CMS, and so we had to add an extra stage of matching these records, matching the records we were creating to the existing records. This was the final setup we kind of devised. So we used the adhesive barcodes that we used in the slide workflow previously. This gave us the most flexibility as we could add these to specimen labels, the specimens themselves. We also used this layout similar to pinned insects, which would allow us to image both specimen and labels in one. This is our final workflow. So we went through the entire collection and barcoded it first with a step added to reference the record in the CMS. And then as you can see in the middle, it splits depending on whether you're dealing with a hand specimen or a slide specimen. Once we went through the entire collection, we then imaged the collection. Again, there were slight differences depending on whether it was a hand specimen or slide specimen, but we meant that we could go through the entire collection all at once, taking reverse images if there was information on the back of labels. This is the data set we ended up with. So there were 2,975 specimens, barcoded, imaged, and fully transcribed. That included 289 type specimens. So roughly 10% of the collection consisted of types. This kind of shows the taxonomic spread. There were mainly flies of those that were identified, but there's all sorts of insect orders and arthropod clades. And there is that big chunk of unidentified, but I will talk about them next. And roughly 50% of the collection is Baltic. So lessons learned. So one of the biggest things that we found was how a piece of amber was registered, and it kind of fell into two categories, either being registered by the object itself or by this organism within the amber. And this meant that if it was by object, we could often have specimens like the bottom one, which was a single specimen with multiple taxonomies. And so most of those unidentified specimens are actually specimens with multiple taxa, and our CMS just doesn't really have a way to represent that currently. The other issue was then when it was by specimen, we ended up taking multiple images. So these two images represent different specimens, even though they're the same piece of amber. Yes, so finally, I just want to thank all the curators involved, so Giles Miller, Zoe Hughes, Richie, and Peter, as well as the wider Collection Moves team for their help in both imaging and transcription. These are my socials, and you can contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.